Hi, we're in week 7. We're going to look at dissociative and somatic symptoms disorders. Now this one I'm going to do one video on dissociative disorders and the other video will be on somatic symptoms. And so each one will have about types, theories, and treatment. Now anxiety is expressed directly in different forms of the anxiety disorders. But in this, the role of dissociative and somatic symptom disorders is inferred that there's anxiety based in it. Now, normally speaking, there's a unity of consciousness, and it gives us a sense of ourselves. So we are who we are. We perceive ourselves as progressing through time and space. But in dissociative disorders, one of these or more of these aspects of daily living are disturbed. Now, either we don't see ourselves moving through time and space in a sequential, consequential way, or we don't have a unity of self. And so dissociative disorders involve changes or disturbances in identity, memory, or consciousness that affects the ability to maintain an integrated sense of self. Now, these are much more unusual and rare, if you will, than some of the other psychological disorders. In fact, there's controversies associated with some of these. And so we're going to explore these and look at them more briefly in an overview. Please make sure you're using your textbook and using it as a guide to get some additional information. Again, you may want to read some of the highlighted areas looking at examples of people who have experienced some of the disorders to get a person's eye view of the experience. It might help you understand the disorder. All right, let's get started. First, we'll look at dissociative identity disorder. Here, two or more distinctive personalities, each possessing well-defined traits and memories, exist within the same person, and they repeatedly take control over the person's behavior. Now, often there is a dominant personality and subordinates, and involves severe alterations or detachments in identity, memory, or consequences. Now, defining features in the dissociation is certain aspects of personality. It involves an adoption of several new identities and as many as 100 different identities. Identities display unique sets of behaviors, even voices and personalities. It was formerly known as multiple personality disorder. Now, some unique aspects of DID or dissociative identity disorder. You'll find this also in table 5.1 on page 190. Now, there are three sort of elements, if you will. One is what's called alters. Alters refer to the different identities or personalities in dissociative identity disorder. There is also a host. That's the identity that seeks the treatment and tries to keep the identity fragments together. And then there's switch. Switch often is instantaneous transitions from one personality to another. Now, this is a disorder with some controversy. Now, the previous page you saw Three Faces of Eve and Sybil. These are celebrated examples of dissociated identity disorder. However, there's been some more research and questions about the frequency and the fallibility of some diagnoses. Now, dissociative identity disorder is very rare, but it seems to have a North American tendency to be diagnosed. Now, Nick Spanos, he's from Carleton University. He didn't think that multiple personalities was a distinct disorder. In fact, he instead saw it as a form of role-playing, where first the individuals would see themselves as having multiple selves and would act in ways that were, consistent with how they thought the disorder was. Then, either intentionally or unintentionally, a therapist or a counselor would reinforce the thought that multiple personalities were at play. And so it's brought into question because he certainly has done some other research and investigations, not only looking at multiple personalities, he's looked at demonism, hypnosis, and looking at whether or not these are exactly as we think they are. A second form of dissociative disorder is what's known as dissociative amnesia. Now, the type of dissociative disorder in which the person experiences memory loss. Either it's memory loss from personal information or in the absence of any organic cause. The general knowledge and skills are usually maintained. Now, there are 5 types of dissociative amnesia: localized, selective, generalized, continuous, and systematized. Now, along with this is what's known as malingering, and this is where there's a tendency to fake illness so as to avoid or escape work or other duties or to obtain benefits. A third form of dissociative disorder is known as depersonalization and derealization disorder, and it involves persistent and reoccurring episodes of depersonalization. They are sufficient severity to cause significant distress or an impairment in functioning. Now, depersonalization is feelings of unreality or detachment from one's own self or one's body, as if one were a robot or functioning on automatic pilot or observing oneself from outside. Derealization episodes are characterized by a sense that one's surroundings have become strange or unreal, for example. Colors may seem washed out or very bright, and times may seem to be oddly slowed down or sped up. Now, there are theories associated with understanding dissociative disorders. Now, they're not, it's not clear-cut or as robust as some others. Excuse me, so you can see the table 5.1 on page 195 for depersonalization and derealization disorder. Now, when we think in terms of theory, we can go back to psychodynamic. The psychodynamic theorists view dissociative experiences as a form of psychological defense by which the ego defends itself against troubling memories and unacceptable impulses by blotting them out of consciousness. Massive use of repression leads to a splitting off from consciousness of the impulses and memories. Now, there is an increasing documentation of the link between dissociative disorders and early childhood trauma, which lends support to the view that dissociation may serve as a protection to the self from troubling memories. Learning theorists considered the repeated not thinking about disturbed acts or thoughts in order to avoid anxiety or remove feelings of guilt and shame. So this again falls back into distorted thinking about repressing memories and don't think about things, and by not thinking about them causes these sort of dissociations. In regards to treatments, we fall back to psychoanalysis, and they try to uncover early childhood traumas. Little is known about what will work. There are very few examples of successful use of psychoanalysis. Biological approaches focus on the use of drugs to treat the anxiety and depression associated with the disorder. But drugs have not been able to bring about regeneration of personalities. Now, there will be and has been some success using drugs and cognitive therapies, which is showing some success. The learning perspective focuses on the use of behavioral methods of reinforcing the most well-adjusted personality. Psychologists work with the most dominant personality, inviting others out. The goal is reintegration. Now, that's a brief overview of looking at dissociative. The next video that I will be doing will be on somatic symptom disorders, and we'll do the same sort of thing, looking at types, looking at theories, and then looking at treatment. All right, let's carry on. Good luck, everybody.